Hi there. Today we are talking about a machine that looks less like a vehicle and more like a rolling argument with common sense. This is the Garford Putilov armored truck of 1915, a vehicle so heavy, so uncompromising, and so strangely designed that even its own crews sometimes looked at it and thought, well, this is going to be interesting. To understand why the Garford Putilov existed at all, you have to remember the chaos of the First World War's Eastern Front. Russia needed armored vehicles immediately, not in theory, not in design studies, but right now. Domestic industry could build armor, but not heavy truck chassis in sufficient numbers. The solution was very Russian in spirit. Take a massive American truck, cover it in armor, mount heavy guns, and send it straight into battle. The base vehicle was the American Garford truck, originally designed for heavy commercial hauling. It was not subtle, not light, and not fast, but it was strong, extremely strong. The chassis was built to carry heavy industrial loads, which made it one of the few platforms capable of supporting full armor plating without folding in half. The Russian Putilov works handled the armored body and final assembly, and that partnership gave the vehicle its name. Visually, the Garford Putilov looks almost brutal. Thick, flat armor plates, sharp angles, exposed rivets everywhere, and proportions that feel more like a railway wagon than a car. This was not about elegance, it was about survival and firepower. Armor thickness reached up to about 6.5 millimeters, which converts to approximately 0.26 inches. By 1915 standards, this was enough to stop rifle fire and shrapnel, which was exactly what crews needed most. Now let's talk about size and mass, because this is where the Garford Putilov really starts to feel ridiculous in the best possible way. Overall length was approximately 6.7 meters, which is about 22.0 feet. Width was around 2.3 meters, roughly 7.5 feet. Height reached about 3.0 meters, or 9.8 feet. Combat weight exceeded 11,000 kilograms, which translates to about 24,250 pounds. This thing was not rolling, it was advancing. Under the armor sat a gasoline engine producing about 30 horsepower. Yes, 30. And no, that is not a typo. Moving more than 11 tons with 30 horsepower sounds insane today, and honestly, it was already insane in 1915. Official torque figures were not documented in period sources, but based on engine design and vehicle mass, the engine delivered strong, low-speed torque at very low revolutions, which was absolutely necessary just to get the vehicle moving at all. Power was sent to the rear wheels only. There was no four-wheel drive, no clever traction aids, and no mechanical mercy. The transmission had 4 forward gears, and every gear change required patience, timing, and physical effort. Top speed on a good road was around 17 kilometers per hour, which equals roughly 10.5 miles per hour. Off-road, speeds dropped dramatically, sometimes to walking pace. At this point, you might ask a very reasonable question. Why build something this heavy, this slow, and this difficult to drive? The answer is firepower. The Garford Putilov was not designed to chase anyone. It was designed to dominate ground once it arrived. The main armament was mounted at the rear, not the front. That alone makes this vehicle unusual. A 76.2 millimeter gun, equivalent to about 3.0 inches, was installed in a rear fighting compartment. This meant the vehicle often drove into position, then reversed toward the enemy to bring its main gun to bear. It sounds awkward, and it was, but it allowed a large artillery piece to be carried on a wheeled vehicle at a time when that idea was still new. In addition to the main gun, the Garford Putilov carried several machine guns positioned around the hull. This allowed it to engage infantry from multiple directions, turning it into a mobile fortress rather than a simple armored car. Ammunition storage was extensive, adding even more weight, but giving the vehicle impressive staying power in combat. Crew size was typically between 8 and 9 men. Inside, conditions were brutal. No insulation, no ventilation worth mentioning, extreme heat in summer, freezing cold in winter, engine fumes, gun smoke, and constant vibration. Communication relied on shouting, hand signals, and experience. This was not a comfortable place to work, but comfort was never part of the design brief.
Despite all its flaws, the Garford Putilov proved effective in its role. On the Eastern Front, where distances were vast and infrastructure poor, its ability to deliver heavy firepower directly to the battlefield mattered more than speed. It was used for infantry support, road control, urban fighting, and defensive operations. In cities, its thick armor and heavy gun made it particularly dangerous. Of course, the weaknesses were obvious. The vehicle was extremely hard to maneuver. Steering was heavy, turning radius was enormous, and reversing under fire required skill and nerve. Mechanical reliability suffered under combat conditions, and recovery was often impossible if the vehicle broke down in the wrong place. Once stuck, it was usually stuck for good. Yet the fact that these vehicles remained in service well beyond 1915 tells you something important. They were too valuable to abandon. Some Garford Putilov armored trucks continued to see use during the Russian Civil War and even into the early years of the Soviet period. Few vehicles of this era had such a long and turbulent career. From a modern perspective, the Garford Putilov feels like a transitional creature, halfway between an armored car and a tank. It lacked tracks, but its role clearly pointed toward the future of armored warfare. Heavy armor, big guns, protected crews, and battlefield endurance were all ideas that would soon evolve into something far more familiar. And here is the strange part. For all its awkwardness, the Garford Putilov worked. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but effectively enough to influence thinking about armored vehicles for years to come. It showed that firepower and protection could be mounted on a mobile platform, even if that platform was stubborn, slow, and occasionally terrifying to drive. So when you look at the Garford Putilov today, you are not just looking at an armored truck. You are looking at a bold, slightly unhinged experiment that helped push military engineering forward by sheer force of will and steel. It is a reminder that innovation does not always look elegant. Sometimes it looks like a metal box on wheels, daring physics to argue back. If you enjoy discovering machines like this, strange, powerful, and historically important, make sure to subscribe. There are many more forgotten giants from the early days of mechanized warfare waiting to tell their stories.